Hi Book 2, welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie and time for an update. So we took a trip to visit my grandma, check on her, and she's not doing too well, unfortunately, so we stayed there. I had 3 days off, so we went to visit her, and I did, of course, bring books with me to read. But I probably brought too many and focused on only 3 of them. And one of them I didn't even read. One of the 3 I didn't even read as much. And that is the Books of Jacob. I brought it with me because at the time before we left, I was like, I want to read this, and I was all excited to read it. But and I did make a little bit of progress, but like only a few pages. So I feel like I can't really talk about it yet to really get a grip on it. We're still in the town of what's the name of the town? Rohatyn? I don't know if I'm saying that right. Said in 1752. And I remember we are with I think he's a Catholic priest who goes to visit. Sorry, my light is at a weird angle. He goes to visit this priest this priest goes to visit this rabbi in the village of Rohatyn, and I'm apologize if I'm not saying the name of the town right. Because he's heard, I think, because he either studied a book or wrote a book, and the priest thinks that maybe they can, like in modern terms, collaborate, or they could discuss the book together. And it does not, and unfortunately the priest doesn't know the language, because I believe they are in somewhere in Poland. They are in Poland. So he needs a translator. So right away I think that gives him problems. And then we just kind of are slowly meeting the different residents in the town, and and I think, according to the back description, there's going to be a little bit of a cult thing going on with the religion and everything. And I know that from reading other people's reviews about the book, they're going to be talking about it's kind of, the themes are Gnostics. So I need to read a little bit more so I can actually really talk about it for you guys. But I did read a little, like I said, I read a couple pages, but not enough to really get a good grip on the storyline to really talk to you guys about it. But honestly, I did read a little bit. I will read some more in a little, like, soon, at some point soon. But I also made some progress on Dombey and Son. And I just want to give Florence a hug. I just feel bad for the Florence Dombey, and how, like, in these chapters I'm reading, and even before that, she was just kept thinking it was something that she did to why her father did not love her and just ignored her. And it drove me crazy, because I want to be like, girl, it is not your fault that your dad is a jerk and thinks you're not worth anything. You are not responsible for what he thinks of you. And it just breaks my heart to see that, and I just want to reassure her. But of course, she probably wouldn't believe me or believe anyone if anyone told her that, and tried to explain to her that no, it is not your fault the way your dad treats you, or that he ignores you, basically, because he doesn't think you're worth anything as a woman. And Mr. Dombey has gotten married again, or he is getting married, to Edith, who was, her mom encouraged them to get together with the help of Major Bagstock, who is Mr. Dombey's friend. And Mr. Carker is back, and he is interested in Florence, but she doesn't even remember him. Like, he's considerably older, because he knew her when she was a little girl. So he's probably in his mid-20s to late 20s at the time, and so she doesn't remember him. She doesn't care about him at all. So, which is funny how He's introducing himself, reminding her of himself, and she's like, "Oh, that's nice," and she's very polite and friendly because she's such a sweet person. Um, but even though I feel like with Dickens, even if you read a good chunk of it, you still feel like there's not a lot of action going on in the story. It's just characters interacting. There's still, I mean, there's action, of course, and there is a plot, but I feel like even if it's a long book, it does. There's a lot of slower scenes, and it's funny because I was at the roast office today because I had today off, and I don't like going on. And Sunday, it's on Sundays. Yes, it's open, but it closes early on Sundays. And then Saturday, I'm working, and even if I wasn't working, I don't want to. I don't like going to that bookstore on Saturdays because it's always so crowded. Because kids are out of school, and I guess I could have gone on Monday because I am off on Monday, but I decided to go today. Just decided to go today, and I will show you that book haul because I did buy some books. But there were a group of young women there. They're probably teenagers. I think it looked like they had a book club going on, and I wanted to, make suggestions for books, but then I was thinking, yeah, I think it's kind of hard because I feel like I would have to ask them a lot of questions of what they're interested in. And I did try to think about, things that I would say to get them talking, or at least suggestions where, like, if you want to get more into reading older literature, go by what your favorite genre to read is in modern literature. And I know that they mentioned, and I heard them mentioning trying to read Jane Eyre or trying to read Great Expectations. And I'm just thinking, like, although people do say that Jane Eyre is one of the easier things to get into, which I agree, but I don't know if it's the best place to start when it comes to if you want to get into older literature, books that are considered quote unquote classics. I feel like it's not even Jane Eyre might not necessarily be the best place to start. I would, like, my opinion, when you're starting to get into classics, start reading the 20th century books, like books that like Fitzgerald or Hemingway, or I'm trying to think of modern, or like Daphne du Maurier possibly, or Zora Neale Hurston. I'm trying to think of because I'm trying to think of a lot of modern. I feel bad. I should know this, but I don't know this at the top of my head. And I also was gonna suggest like maybe some of the children's literature, like that's considered children's literature, like Little Women, or like Ella Montgomery's Anne Green Gables series. Although one of the girls said that Little Women is not that great, not that whichever So I was kind of like, what, never mind. I basically chickened out and was because I don't know, and I wouldn't recommend them. And I think that a teen audience, and if anyone that watches my channel is a teenager, I hope I'm not offending you with this comment, and if you disagree with me, that but I don't know, it feels like a lot of teens are a little harder to pin down what they like to read, or to like they're a little harder to I don't want to say please, but sometimes I think they're a little teen readers can be a little harder to please, or like they are a little more particular when it comes to older literature. But I mean, like I said, I could be wrong, and if there's anyone that's in the teen age group that watches my channel, I apologize. I hope I'm not offending you by these comments. But it's just, I mean, and like, I could be wrong, but that's just my opinion when it comes to, But anyway, they mentioned, Great Expectations, and I don't know if they like that. It said that they try to read it. Which, yeah, I think Dickens is sometimes, because he's so very wordy, like, I don't know what other, it's not as easy to get into Dickens. And then sometimes, and I did think about recommending a Trollope, because I think Trollope writes similar types of stories, but they're like, or, well, you know what? Trollope, I feel like, is a mix between Jane Austen and Charles Dickens. Um, like, I do, even though there are a lot of people who actually would rather read Trollope than Dickens, because they, in their opinion, Trollope is easier to read and get into, and his characters, I think a lot of people feel like his characters feel authentic, more authentic and more natural, which, yeah, Dickens' characters are a lot of times very exaggerated, and he hyper focuses on a certain trait. You know, Tristan from Tristan in the Classics, he did a really great video where he talked about Dickens in his writing, and there's a certain thing that he does with his characters where he takes a particular trait and just overinflates that trait. Like, I feel like that's one of the things he's known for. So with Trollope, his characters are more natural and realistic, and I do like Trollope, and I actually like both personally. So I was thinking about I did think about recommending Trollope to them as well, but then again, maybe that wouldn't work for them either. So like I said, I kind of chickened out. But anyway, so yeah, I want to get back to this. I keep, yeah, and because when I start reading this, as long as, when I start reading, I enjoy it. I do, like, but it's just, the longer the book is, the more, like, all these times where I pause and take long breaks, like sometimes years long breaks before I come back to it, if it's a book this long. So that's all I gotta say about this one. I don't, but the most book I have a lot to say about, which even then I only read like the first 2 chapters, and I'm in the middle of chapter 3, is my reread of Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. And this was a book that I did attempt a couple years ago. I wanted to attempt a reread because I had read this when I was a teenager and I loved it then. And even then, it still took me years to read it. So a couple years ago, I attempted my reread of it with Terry. But here's the problem with that. We didn't set a schedule. We didn't pick, like, or at least not that I remember. We weren't, very, like, forthcoming about scheduling when we would read this and when we would, contact each other and talk about the book. And it's kind of hard when it comes to, like, because either we're calling each other or we're texting each other. And in fact, right now, I at the moment don't know if I'm able to call her yet. So, and I also, it doesn't help that I don't know her hours at the moment. I don't know her schedule. Like, before, when she was working her other job, I knew what her schedule was. But, of course, that's not what was going on at the time. The other problem is, I feel like, and maybe I'm wrong here if she's watching this video, but I feel like our reading paces are a little different. Like, I'm reading almost all the time. Except for, like, maybe in the evening, a couple hours before I go to bed, I'll be watching TV or something. But mostly I am reading almost all the time. And, like, I go the whole method of having a book with me wherever I go. In fact, I finally, last year when we were planning our trip to London, I was, finally was like, okay, I'm just going to buy a Kindle so that I can have, because I can't carry books with me because they do have weight. So I had got a Kindle, and so, like, my point being that I feel like our reading paces are different, and I might get through this a little bit faster than her. And then we didn't really hold each other accountable. Like, we didn't really contact each other and make sure the other person was reading. Plus, I was reading other works at the time as well. So it just was not working out. And I eventually kind of forgot about it and gave up. And then I finally decided to pick it up. And it was actually, again, because of Terry, because she brought it up and found the whole Scarlett and Rhett relationship, everyone loving them as a couple, was really, like, interesting to her, because she doesn't understand why people root for them as a couple. Because they are kind of toxic. They are a very dysfunctional couple. Although the sequel Scarlet, which I didn't like, I know not everybody's gonna like it, and it's not by Margaret Mitchell, but I actually kind of liked the sequel Scarlet. I thought it was really good, and I like how Scarlet got to go to Ireland, and see where her father grew up. But anyway, so it was actually her that reminded me that I wanted to reread it. So I decided to go ahead and pick it up and start my reread. So I brought it with me. I was hesitant because it is a hardback. My edition is a hardback, which it's a hardback because it is the edition that my mom got from her mom, my grandmother. I don't know if was just a. Well, I guess no, it couldn't be because it wasn't a birthday gift because my mom's birthday is this month actually, so it wasn't a birthday gift because it wasn't. She received this. The date on here is January 9th, so I don't know. I guess it was just the book that my grandma got for my mom. So it's her copy. So it's a very old copy from '74. So maybe it was when she was in high school. I think high school. I would have to double check on that. But, and I just don't have the heart to buy another copy, a more paperback, nicer copy. Although I look at them at Books A Million and think about it. But which is funny considering one of the books I bought today, not Gone with the Wind, but another book, and I will show you that in a minute. But anyway, so I brought it with me and I started reading the first 3 chapters of the book. And I'm in the middle of chapter 3. I'm not done with it yet. But lately when I picked it up, there's been distractions and everything. So it's a very interesting book because it's a Pulitzer Prize winner from when it came out. The year, so I guess it won the Pulitzer Prize in 1937 because I think that was the year that the book came out. And this book has stirred a lot of controversy, and that controversy has come out again. More recently, I think because we're even more social aware, and especially with social media and everything. And this has a lot of issues like glorifying the South and the Southern way of life. Which is, like, there are aspects, and I'm talking about back during the time of the Civil War, and probably in the 30s, too. Not today. I mean, I love the South. I have Southern in my blood, because my grandfather was Southern, so I like to think I have a little Southern in me. I do like their food, and I currently live in the South, but, and, of course, there's the racism. That glaring racism. Our main character, Scarlett O'Hara, lives on a plantation, and her family has slaves to run the plantation, and it's very complicated, just how that is portrayed in this book, and it's another one where the author tries to use that kind of dialect, the way the slaves might have spoke, and sometimes can be very hard to read. And just it's very not just the dialect, but also just reading all the scenes with the slaves and how they are treated. It just makes you uncomfortable, especially, like maybe when you're reading this as a younger person, you might not be as aware, but I mean, maybe you are, if you really, but I imagine a lot of teenagers reading this wouldn't necessarily be always aware of that and consider that. Like the first chapter with the Tarleton twins, which, by the way, they're incredibly annoying characters and very kind of idiots. Like, they have... Okay, so, well, first, if you don't know, unless you've seen the movie or actually have dared to read the book, or just through osmosis, because it's one of those books in pop culture that you hear the quotes from the movie/book all the time, and it's always in that top 100 movies, and I mean, it almost swept the Oscars that the year the movie came out. Almost. I don't think it got all of them. And so we have our main character, Katie Scarlett. The book starts when she's 16 years old, and she is the spoiled little princess and rich little princess. Her, like I said, her family owns a plantation. And this is right before the Civil War happens. The first chapter starts right before the Civil War, and so the rest of the book you are experiencing the Civil War from the perspective of the Confederacy. The book takes place in Georgia, so it's from the biased view of the losers of the Civil War. And it goes through the Civil War all the way to the Reconstruction era, when the South is trying to rebuild itself. So it's really examining this time in history and what the South went through, and how this beautiful way of life for the Southerners, for the rich Southerners, has been gone with the wind, as the title says. And Scarlett has to survive and fight to protect her family. She becomes head of her household, and even though she is a bitch and a spoiled brat and very vain, she still knows how to get what she wants, even if it means hurting other people. And she doesn't, I do admire the fact that she doesn't just sit on her ass and complain. Like, I mean, there is a little complaining, but there is complaining, but on her end. But she also does something. Unfortunately, it's at the expense of other people, which is not great. So I have very mixed feelings. I mean, I love and I hate Scarlett. Like, I want to smack her, but I want to cheer her on at the same time. And she is in love with Mr. Ashley Wilkes. But she sadly finds out that he is going to get married to his cousin. Yes, his cousin, Melanie Wilkes. I mean Melanie Hamilton. And somehow Scarlett, right before the war, she ends up getting herself engaged to Charles Hamilton, Melanie's brother. And she becomes Melanie's sister-in-law, and they form this really strange bond, strange relationship, because Melanie always sees the good in her and is always, defending Scarlett, and she refuses to see the bad in Scarlett, even though Scarlett is pining after her husband. And meanwhile, you have Rhett Butler, who is a scoundrel, and he's a charmer. He's a really sharp businessman who, he's a lot like Scarlett, and he knows that. He knows that Scarlett is his female counterpart, and he is interested in Scarlett. He is fascinated with her, and he falls in love with her, but she doesn't love him. She wants nothing to do with him, and she continues to pine after Ashley, and he pines after her, but he does not show it. And like Scarlett, people are drawn to him. Women are drawn to him as men are drawn to Scarlett. And this is just so anyway, in the beginning of the first chapter, she finds from the Tarleton twins, these annoying boys who, she flirts with them mercilessly, and they flirt back, so they're like, oh, she's in love with us. And they tell her that it's going to be announced that Ashley and Scarlett and Melanie are going to get married, and she refused to believe it. And she even asked her dad about it, and he tries to tell her, it's like, you two are different people. You wouldn't work well together. You don't fit. You're very different. Which is interesting, because she ends up bringing up the fact that her parents are completely opposite of each other. And they're from different classes. Like, her father is an Irish poor immigrant. But he knew how to work the system, and he got himself up there. And they respected him, considered him a gentleman. He worked hard and improved the plantation. And you find out, because chapter 3 is kind of the background information about her parents and how they met and stuff. And you find out that Ellen was in love with someone else, but then he left and got killed. So heartbroken, Ellen agreed to marry Gerald O'Hara. And they have a pretty good life. Well, like I said, Gerald is boisterous, he's loud, he's very laid back. And she is much more quiet, reserved, very sensible and practical person. Which, like, it's funny that I feel like Scarlett definitely has a little bit of both of her parents in her. She's probably more like her dad, but I think some of her skills in the way of getting things done comes from her mom. But anyway, the part with the Tarlin twins in the first chapter, like, they're like, they tell her and she just goes really quiet. She continues conversing with them and responds rightfully, but she's just very quiet, and they're confused about that, and they're all like, why didn't she invite us for supper? And they're just like, they're like, oh no, Scarlett's in love with us. Why would she care about Ashley? Oh, she probably only cares because she's mad that she didn't know first. And I'm like, really? Of course, I've already read this, so I know what the story is here. But then again, just her reaction, her son, where they talk about how her lips turn white. Like, her rest of her was composed, but her lips, like, they turn white. Like, how you're pale from reacting to something bad or something that makes you ill. That's the only thing that happened is her lips turned pale. But the rest of her was fine, and she was able to respond to them. And just the way they treat their slave. Let me look for his name. It should be easy to find because it's at the end of the first chapter. What is his name? I want to say his name. Is it? Maybe it's James. Or I guess maybe it's James. I want to get his name right. I guess maybe it's James. The way, like, basically, so they got in trouble with their mom for some reason. They knew they were going to they got kicked out of school once again. And they know that they're going to get in trouble with their mom. So they're like, we better not go home. So they're like, oh, we'll cut through this person's yard and maybe they'll let us hang out at dinner at their place. And, James is very, he's trying to tell him, there's not going to be much food left. And he's like, well, maybe not for you, but for us, we're going to get food. And then he's like, and you're going to go home and tell mom what happened. You're going to face our mother. And he knows what's going to happen. He's going to get in trouble for them. And I'm just like, you're basically sending him fish to the fryer all because you're too cowardly to face your mom. I mean, I get it. When you're in trouble, you don't want to face your parents. Like, I get it. But you know what? That's still cowardly to send someone else to do your dirty work. Like, I face my parents when I know I did something. I mean, I might come out there, peek around the corner and be a little hesitant, but I will still face my parents. I'm not going to send someone else, even if they work for you. I'm not going to do that. And just, they act like he's stupid, and and they're so disrespectful to him. Unfortunately, he works for them, so it's just, they can get away with it. And it's very hard to read those parts of how they treat them. And, the whole thing with Mammy takes care of the daughter, Miss Scarlett and her sisters, and she doesn't get enough credit for that. It's just, all those parts are just so hard to read. I mean, I think Red was respectful to her and kind to Mammy. I don't know, but it's been coming out in the open once again a lot more. And I think a good person, if you're interested, they're a good person to watch that really discusses this because is Greg from Supposedly Fun. He does videos. He's been doing this project talking about um books that all the Pulitzer Prize winners and discussing them and what they're about in their history and what they were up against and the history of the author. And in this case, he talks about a lot of the issues with Gone with the Wind, all the controversies, and deciding did this book deserve to win the Pulitzer Prize or not. He talks about that as well, and it's a good. Maybe I'll share the link if I can, share the link for that video and post it in the description box so you guys can watch if you're interested. I also liked Mike's book review. Mike from Mike's book review, he also did a good review of the book where he talked about the good and the bad of the book. That's how his approach to his reviews are. He talks about the good and then the bad to try to see if you're interested in reading the book or not, if you think it's worth it. So that's another good review. Like I said, Greg kind of, I think, does more of a deep dive and than Mike does. But yeah, those are two really good reviews, I think, on the book. But anyway, I will pick this up again soon and read a little bit more. Finish. It's hard to tell because I'm always thinking about, trying to think about, okay, I gotta get short of these other books done as well because I'm in the middle of a lot of books right now. Because I always find myself in that. I'm like, always doing that and trying to determine, I mean, that's the thing with the library too, is that it's like I have so many, I want to, read all these other books before I start going to the library again, so I won't have those hanging over me and thinking, oh, I need to get those, but I need to read this library book so I can return it. It's hard for me to determine what's a good time to go to the library. I mean, that might be something to do on the Monday I'm off. That might be a good idea to go to the library. But anyway, so let me talk about the books I'm currently reading. So I did read a little bit of The Stand. This is another one of those big chunky books I need to read. I've only read like a chapter. I finished chapter 4 because I had started this a few months ago, at some point last year. And see, that's my problem. I will start these bigger books, but then all of a sudden be like, oh, I have so many other books that won't take me as long to read. So I gotta get those done too. And then there are so many big books that I'm like, I want to read this big book and I want to read this one. And, but anyway. So I'm only on chapter 5. Although what I like about Stephen King is his writing style is very easy to read. It's like it's very simple. He's good at descriptions, but it's also it's accessible to read him. And I feel like even the chunky books you can get a good chunk read if you just sit down and sit down for 30 minutes and just read. Especially because a lot of his, he's one of those authors who does write short chapters. He's not like James Patterson, but he will have shorter chapters scattered throughout his book, especially depending on the plot and the pacing. But where the disease spreading is all I gotta say, and the disease that's gonna kill half the population is spreading really quickly, and people are getting sick, having colds and coughing and hacking, and it's kind of gross. But yeah, so I haven't, like I said, there's not a lot to talk about with this. And that's the only problem. As much as I enjoy reading before bed, if I'm tired and laying in bed, then I'm I can barely keep my eyes open. I will only get through a couple pages, which is why I decided to read this book instead of this book when I was in bed last night, because the print is a lot bigger, and the chapters, it doesn't take long to get to a stopping point in this and Stephen King's books. So yeah, so it was just easier for me to read The Stand and at least finish that chapter. Finish chapter 4. So now we're gonna talk about The Red and the Black. Fortunately, this has a couple of food stains because I did bring it with me to the roast office, and I did grab some lunch there. A really good grilled cheese sandwich with palmetto cheese. Fortunately, it was a little messy. It was a little melty. But anyway, so in The Red and the Black, our main character, Julian, he has now gone to the seminary. Because Klein has gone to the open, his little affair with Madame Renal. So he's going to the seminary so he won't get in trouble. And he can stay away from her because, they both agree it's the best thing to keep them apart. So her husband will not harm him. And he actually, a lot of the other scholars are threatened by him. They don't like him ever, or their feelings about him kind of go back and forth. Sometimes, and then when he first gets it, they don't like him. They think he's overeducated and he's a bit pompous and he knows more than they do, and they're jealous of him and his knowledge and his arrogance. But he's completely what? I don't get it. Why don't you guys like me? And he's kind of having a little bit of struggle in the seminary and just adapting and making the right choices. And this Marquise has invited him to come to Paris, but I actually am completely went over my head. Why? I totally don't understand what happened. Maybe someone wrote him a letter of recommendation. One of the abbes maybe wrote him a letter of recommendation to this Marquise, or maybe one of his friends. I totally missed that. But there was like I said, some of my reading was done where there's a lot of talking in the background, so sometimes there are details I might miss. But yeah, he's going to Paris. And I remember, even though I read the description of what this is about, at first I was thinking, as I started reading, it was oh, so it's gonna be a love story between these two having an affair and him wanting to be, but because of class distinction and the obvious fact that she's married, they're gonna be prevented from that. People are not gonna I thought that was gonna be the main focus of the book, is that little affair and everything, which it's part of it. I mean, it kind of sets him on his path a bit, but it's not the main. I think it's just Julian's journey, and that's part of his journey, is his relationship with Madame Renal. And he's talking about these authors. I mean, sometimes I wish I could read some of the stuff that he's read, but it's very intimidating, some of those works. And I'm slowly trying to get more into those works and understand them, because they're very philosophical and really, you really got to think what you're thinking about, and you can't just read it like, a book, just read it like a story. You really have to pay attention and study it. And that's the thing. I like the idea of scholarship, but first of all, it's intimidating. It's a lot of work. And I don't, I mean, if I did go back to school or take some classes, it wouldn't exactly be the fantasy that I have in my head, which is probably because of dark academia and getting into that and everything. But yeah, I am very interested in Julian's journey and where he's going to end up. And I'm almost on the last chapter of the first volume, so I'm almost at the second volume. So I'm going to read a little bit more tonight. But watching his journey, going up in the upper echelons of society, is going to be really quite the adventure to see him and see what he does to prove himself. And I do know from Tristan in the classics, I don't know if he read the back of the book or just or because this might have been one of the books he talked about where he had not read it. He was just giving this as an option for him to read. He said, I'm not sure. but he mentioned this book and how like the character is going to have quite the fall. He's going to rise in society, but then the harder he will fall, basically. So I'm looking forward to that and seeing what happens. Okay, now it's time for the book haul. Once again, I was able to resist and I still got 3 books. I was going in there thinking, I'm going to get 2 books, but then I picked up a bunch of them. It was actually one of those days where there were multiple choices of books that I was interested in. And they had this big sale in March where they had like 100 books that were worth that a little sticker that's, that said either $1 to $2. So I was looking to see if there was anything that I was interested in those piles, and I found this. Unfortunately, it doesn't have a dust jacket, so it is The Revolutionary Samuel Adams by Stacy Schiff. I have the John Adams book by David McCullough that I need to read, and this is one of those books where it's like, because it's non-historic, it's like, am I gonna be like, it's still kind of a risk if I'm taking a book like, a book like this, because there is always a chance that it might be like, it could potentially be too dry or might be boring to me, in the end. But yeah, this author wrote a book on Cleopatra, which I have, and there's a book on the witches of the Salem witches, so I'm guessing the witch trials and that whole history. And there's actually a book about the time when Franklin was in France, that he wrote, called A Great Improvisation, Franklin, France, and the Birth of America. So it's not the first time that she's tackled the American Revolution. But ever since seeing Hamilton, and even before that with 1776, and John M., my dad being a big fan of that play and wanting to play John Adams, I've always been interested in the American Revolution. It's just, I feel like the Hamilton musical kind of exasperated it. Sorry, I can't say that word. And got me even more intrigued in the American Revolution. So this is another book about a figure in the American Revolution. And okay, I will. Oh crap. Okay. Oh no, I'm not. Sorry, you guys, but I keep getting these things to check my protection on my computer and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, so yeah, I'm looking forward to reading this about Samuel Adams, but first I have to finish the John Adams book, so I will do that soon. I mean, actually, I should probably think about picking it up, like, right up, like, sooner rather than later, especially now having bought this. Okay. And next, I have... Okay, so this was a book I was thinking about getting, and I thought my sister had this book, and but I didn't see it. But she did have Native Son, which I need to pick this up. I have just not been inspired to read it lately. I should, So I brought this home because I gotta return it back to my sister soon. So, although I don't think she will notice, in all honesty, she might even forgot about it, and she's got a lot of other things to worry about, and her kids and everything to worry about. So I need to read this one. But the book I wanted to get was this one, The Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. I thought that they had this book, but I didn't see it on their shelf where they keep their books. So I saw it at the roast. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna grab this. I want to read this. So let's see. And now I don't remember exactly the premise of this one, so I'm gonna just read the back. First published in 1952 and immediately hailed as a masterpiece, Invisible Man is one of those rare novels that have changed the shape of American literature. For not only does Ralph Ellison's nightmare journey across the racial divide tell unparalleled truths about the nature of bigotry and its effects on the minds of both victims and perpetrators, it gives us an entirely new model of what a novel can be. As he journeys from the Deep South to the streets and basements of Harlem, from a horrifying battle royale where black men are reduced to fighting animals, to a communist rally where they are elevated to the status of trophies, Ralph Ellison's nameless protagonist ushers readers into a parallel universe that throws our own into harsh and even hilarious relief. Suspenseful and sardonic, narrated in a voice that takes in the symphonic range of American language, black and white, Invisible Man is one of the most audacious and dazzling novels of our time. And I kind of like the cover. Like the typography and then these little green symbols. I'm curious what they would be, what they mean. And let's see, I don't remember I have read what this one is about too, but I'm gonna go ahead and read it again because I do not remember. Right from the start, Bigger Thomas has been headed for jail. It couldn't have been for assault or petty larceny by chance. It was for the murder and rape. A native son tells the story of this young black man caught in a downward spiral after he kills a young white woman in a brief moment of panic. Set in Chicago in the 1930s, writes powerful novels, unsparing reflection of poverty and feelings of hopelessness experienced by people in inner cities across the country and of what it means to be black in America. I wonder if that... Okay, so I'm reading this quote here. This new edition gives us a native son in which the key line and the key scene is restored to the great good fortune of American letters. The scene as we now have it is central both to an ongoing conversation among African American writers and critics and to the consciousness among all American readers of what it means to live in a multiracial society in which power splits among the racial lines. So I'm wondering if that means, like, was there a scene that they cut because it was supposedly offensive or something, or are they being metaphorical here? I don't know. But I do need to pick these up, both these, and I feel like I should probably read this one first because I need to give it back to my sister. But anyway, so now back to the books that I bought. So the last book I need to buy, because I ended up buying 3 books. Okay, so I did something bad, something a little naughty. And that is, the reason why I said it's like how normally I don't buy multiple copies of books because, do I have the shelf space? And, so even though I would like I would rather have a paperback copy of Gone with the Wind because it's one of those bigger books. So I ended up buying, but, I don't buy it because, one, that is the copy my mom used to own as a gift for my grandmother, and then also, in most cases, I feel guilty for buying multiple copies because it's like I need to make more space for newer books that I'm more interested in reading. I should say not more interested, but books that I haven't read yet. I need to make space for those, so I try to resist buying multiple copies. But I saw this one. I saw this copy of The Count of Monte Cristo. I bought I have the Oxford World Edition copy of that book. And it's perfectly fine. I mean, it's a little old, and you can tell it's well read. In fact, let me get it. Let me show you. So here's my original copy. It's kind of battered, but it's still good, decent, and it's a little torn. I don't even know if I gave it to the, the roast office. Would they take it? So I might have to keep it. But yeah, I mean, it's a perfectly good copy. But I kind of like these Penguin Black Spine copies. And I kind of want another one. And this is actually, I think this is the one that Carolyn has. Because I know that Emmy has the cloth-bound edition, which is in on my wish list, which I should probably take. I'm going to take that one off my wish list. But yeah, she has that copy. I think she has the cloth-bound copy, and Carolyn has this one, and I saw it, and then I saw the roast office, and I probably shouldn't have bought it and just left it for someone else to read, to buy and discover, but oh my god, I really wanted it, because I'm greedy. But this is one of my favorite books, and this is an old one. This is very old and battered, and I mean, and I don't know, because it's kind of old and battered, I don't know if they would take it if I donated it. Because I mean, it does that and everything, so I might just end up having 2 copies of it, which I probably shouldn't. But I have a problem. But anyway, so now I have 2 copies of Count of Monte Cristo. One that's a little nicer looking at the moment, and one that's really battered. And I don't know if I'll ever, and I might just end up keeping it, because I don't think anyone would take it. But I mean, I could always pass it on to someone one day, But hey, I didn't it was $4, so it wasn't that expensive. I mean, compared to what it would be at Books A Million. So, hey, it would have been really bad if I bought it at Books A Million, which means it would probably cost $20 to get it. If I and I would definitely feel guilty. But anyway, so that is what's going on with my reading right now, and that's also my little book haul. I know I just did a book haul, but you know what? The books I got from Black Castle, I got them technically for free because I used my credits. And I didn't even use all my credits. But, so yeah, I mean, so anyway, I hope you are having a good day today and enjoying your reading. And have you hauled any books lately? Have you been to the library lately? Would love to know. Or just what you're currently reading. Feel free to share in the comments below. And I hope you are enjoying that. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Click subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bell icon below if you want to be notified about my latest videos. And I will talk to you all later. Alright, bye!